I'm Steve Ward, Chief Marketing Officer for Source Defense. We're here at the 2024 PCI North America Community Meeting. Super excited. We're here to change the industry. Let's go find out what's going on.
The skimming threat, well, it's growing, it's evolving. We're seeing more of this, and it's less controlled. The view from a security practitioner's perspective, like myself, it's becoming an uncontrolled threat. The sophistication of the exploits through e-skimming have surpassed what a lot of the security mechanisms that are in place are at, essentially.
You see insert skimmers in the fuel stations, and you see a lot of e-commerce, man-in-the-middle type stuff. And I think now the e-commerce landscape is the one that I worry about the most.
I'm definitely seeing that, hackers are learning. They can run tools against these websites, and they can start learning about how that e-commerce site is built. They can insert their own iframe code for payment pages and so forth, and have their own payment provider paying them instead of you. And a lot of times these customers don't even realize that this additional payment page is on their website.
The landscape has moved as well, where they move from data in transit to getting data at the point of input. These new requirements that the council has introduced to make sure that you protect that data as soon as possible at the point of input.
I think we'd like merchants of all sizes to understand about these e-commerce skimming threats is that it can happen to any merchant of any size. Whether you're a small merchant servicing 1 or 2 clients, or a merchant servicing thousands and thousands of clients, the risk is still there, and you need to make sure that you protect your clients just the same way. So you take all of their payment information, so make sure that you secure it and hold that as a high responsibility for your organization.
When it comes to 643 and e-skimming in general, I tell my clients that every requirement in PCI is based on a breach. And so it's critical that, the fact that the standard hasn't been updated in 6 years or 8 years, that, they need to get this done now because breaches are occurring due to e-skimming, and that they really need, to implement this as soon as possible and not wait just because for compliance sake.
Source Defense believes and always has believed that in order to achieve cybersecurity and data privacy, compliance, and safe online commerce, that it's a shared effort. It really has to be a community effort. That's one of the things that we take the most pride in, is the community that we've built around client-side security and preventing e-skimming attacks. As a PCI participating organization, we were fortunate enough to educate and inform the PCI Council of the e-skimming threat landscape many, many years ago. Now are the only vendor in this space that sits on the Small Merchant Task Force for PCI, because fundamentally we believe that online commerce should be democratized. It should be safe for everyone, not just the enterprise, but the mom and the pop shop that adds such richness to the fabric of our lives. The sense of community that we've built is something that's very enriching, I think, to the company and of personal value to me.
We are always soliciting feedback from our stakeholder community, our participating organizations, and other industry bodies. We really seek their input and what's happening out there in the wild. We want to know the technological advancements, and so we hope that you out there are able to share that information with us so that we can tailor our guidance to suit the needs of the industry the best.
Well, the reason Source Defense has been spending so much time working with the QSAs and educating them is it's a new requirement for them as well. 643 and 1161 has been a challenge, not only for the QSA community to understand the background to the technical issues that they're going to have to assess against, help their merchants prepare for, but it's a challenge for these merchants to get ready as well. So we've enabled the QSAs with certain tools. We've also enabled them with roundtable discussions that we do on a quarterly basis. We've got a QSA enablement program that's really designed to help answer a lot of these questions, get them ready, get their merchants ready, get their service providers ready. And so that's what Source Defense has been doing in the market.
A lot of the changes that are happening within PCI 4.0 have been almost monumental for PCI because there's been a lot of brand new requirements, and a lot of folks in the industry, including even I'm guilty of it sometimes, will talk about it with fear. Like it's a negative thing, like, oh no, we're way more, we're a third party and we've never had to do a full SAC-A before, a self-assessment under a formal attestation for PCI before, and this is really scary, and this is it seems like a lot of work, etc., and it can be perceived as a negative thing. All of these things are opportunities. And not to be cliche, but I mean, a lot of these things represent opportunities to secure the security posture of the payment systems and card data.
With these new requirements, working with your third-party service provider is more important than ever. And it's very, very important to make sure that the responsibilities are known between each party. What we did in version 4.0.1 is we added applicability notes to requirements 643 and 1161 to clarify that any scripts running on the third-party service provider's iframe, even if it resides on the merchant's webpage, if it's in that iframe and it's managed by a third-party service provider, it's that service provider's responsibility to manage those controls.
We firmly believe that educating and enabling all aspects of the compliance chain are essential in order to achieve the goals. So one of the things that we're most proud of is operating the world's largest global QSA partner enablement program. So this is 300 QSAs and growing every day. Through this community, we inform, we educate, we empower, and we enable QSAs and their clients to run effortless, painless, quick assessments against these new regulations.
The first piece of advice I'd give to merchants that haven't got moving yet is waiting will not help you. There may be some sort of cost, whether it's a resource or tool cost that may be associated with meeting these new requirements. So it's important you get started on those right away so that you can implement and budget accordingly.
What I would say to them is you better get going and stop standing still. The problem is a lot of people are under this idea that because the new requirement doesn't kick in until April 1 of next year, that they can sit back and if they've got one last report within this next, few months here, that they're good for a year. It doesn't work that way. When a requirement starts to take place, that means you need to be doing it at that point.
Now we're in the window of about 6 months. We're getting close to that 6-month mark that they really need to start moving.
You're going to have some entities which implement the requirements and meet the controls, and you're probably going to have some that are still waiting. And unfortunately, the ones that are waiting are likely to get breached and, going to pay a price for that.
It should be something that begins now. You don't want to wait until April 1st to be doing this. But the great news is the heavy lift is in the beginning.
And if I go in as a QSA and I ask them to show me, what have you been doing for this requirement since April 1, 2025? And it's, say, October 2025. And they're like, well, we didn't do anything because we were waiting for the next rock. Doesn't work like that.
Yeah, so this is a tough one because what we're seeing is whenever you have technical infrastructure that you need to implement, even though you might have a simple e-commerce tool out there that may only need just a little bit of code put in the header of your e-commerce page, what people don't realize is the tuning aspect of it, right? And really qualifying everything that's on that web page and all of the scripts that are there, understanding what they're doing, knowing what they're doing. Even though the tool helps and gives a lot of insight and understanding, they still need to take the time to, 1, go through a sales process, 2, get it implemented, and then 3, make sure that to the QSA that it's a well-managed tool and that you're tracking, and we got months of data that shows that there's analytics and that you guys are actually managing the stuff that's going on. So it's not as simple as like, oh, I'll just get the tool and I'm done. To a QSA, you got to prove that you have this practice in place, and it needs to show that it's been in place since, March 31st, 2025. So now's the time that people need to be implementing this tool because, and they need to be tuning it, because we're going to be looking at those reports and what's out there. And if we see a lot of red, flags in there because of their tool or whatever, that's saying, hey, you got all this stuff that you haven't authenticated or you haven't inventoried or you haven't checked out, we're going to question why do you have that on your website? That's not compliant to us.
So if you want to keep acting like, you got a free year and we don't really have to do this, you're down here worrying about the floor. The attackers are up here somewhere, and you need to keep aiming at the ceiling to block them. And you have to have security and layers, and you have to have multiple hoops and traps. And if you don't, you're going to get breached.
After March 31st, there's no avoiding it. You're non-compliant.
Part of the problem now is going to be, their time to market in terms of their solution. resources are already stretched thin. To be able to meet the rigor of the new challenges of meeting security controls for PCI and the new rigor behind those controls will be very challenging to do in a custom or homegrown environment. So that's one of the factors that I think is going to come into play.
So as a QSA, I'm not going to tell somebody you have to do it this way, but to develop it on your own, the thing we want organizations to think about is it's beyond just developing a solution to meet what they read, in the black and white of a requirement. It's the support. It's how they're going to be able to detect, log, how they're going to be able to authorize, keep records of that. The solution needs to help them actually achieve compliance, which will be providing proof that this process is really working to meet the intent of the requirement. I would just consider that if an organization is trying to use some of these CSP and other things to help build their own solution, and make sure it meets all of the requirements, not just the subset they think is important. Because as we assess, each part of the bullets in that requirement need to be addressed. And it could turn out to be a burden to be able to support that and so forth. So we highly recommend using third-party tools, third-party solutions.
CSP as a concept, great. The content security policy implemented in a web page can provide a lot of security. The downside is it's fail closed. If this isn't actively maintained, your whole web page will stop. Your ability to process transactions stops. This is effectively a dead end instead of providing you an alert and action to follow up on. So it's a very effective control, but it's difficult to maintain, similar with SRI.
I've told my clients that CSP isn't going to work for them in most cases. I probably have one out of my many clients that may possibly be able to pull it off. The problem with that is everything changes. These scripts are so bloody dynamic. It's so easy to bypass it. You have to have somebody that wants to bypass it. All they have to do is rename a script or do a couple other little doodads. Next thing you know, they're in. And somebody has to be policing that thing and watching it constantly. It's very manual. There's a lot of kind of, ups and downs to it. So no, I don't want any of my clients really using that. And so Source Defense is filling a very important need because, quite frankly, every merchant that's out there, and I believe on one of the charts they had yesterday, almost 10,000 rocks were produced last year, merchant rocks. That's a lot of merchants. And so that means that we definitely need them to start looking at solutions, and Source Defense is one of those solutions.
There's a lot of options out there. I think this is one we found that they can scale to your smallest e-commerce and smallest merchants. Whether we're investigating or we're providing QSA services, a lot of times we work with small merchants, right? We work with small, medium-sized enterprise, and we work with large, very large organizations. So we needed something that scaled and something that was a good solution for everyone.
Optiv is vendor agnostic. We, do all things security, from managed services to product integration to risk and compliance and professional services type stuff. So it's important for our QSAs to be, vendor agnostic, and when we're going through and doing an audit and an assessment type of work, to review through the controls, and then if we find a gap, let's say like 6.4.3, we're going to ask questions like, do you have tools in place that can do this job? And if they don't, then we're going to say you need to get a tool. And if they say, well, who should I get and what should I do, we would then list out all of our partners. So Source Defense has been one of our valuable partners that we've had, because they're always quick to respond, quick to engage with our account team. Our account teams that have been working with them love them, and they're pretty thorough.
Source Defense is one of a number of companies that aim to simplify this process by saying, we're going to look at your webpage. We're going to there's flavors for most of these things. We can have this installed in, or we can just do a passive observation of, to say, this is what you have, check it out. Can you justify this? In fact, it's going to provide you with an inventory of justification, which is nice, it's convenient. And then it's going to say something changed and kick out a report to you. The concept of this is that, well, effectively you got a plug and play option to address your security needs and meet 643.1161. It could definitely simplify things.
As a QSA, we have to do multiple recommendations regardless. We tend to partner with Source Defense simply because based on the other solutions we've seen out there, we found that Source Defense had the best value by far and the most realistic price point, and it just works. We've used it in our practice for forensics and have actually found ongoing breaches with Source Defense's help.
When I built Source Defense, I created it in a way which was as automatic as I can, so people will be able to do stuff without even thinking about it. It just works and prevents real-time attacks that we're seeing all the time.
Source Defense has become a multinational cybersecurity and data privacy company. We operate the world's largest global QSA enablement program. We have MSP and resale partners in every theater across the world, and we have customers on every continent. So we are well suited to help all comers, regardless of geography, and to help achieve globally this goal of ensuring safe online commerce.